All right, welcome to the Jim Acosta Show. It is another day that ends in Y and Trump's attacks on American institutions, with the GOP now looking to carry out a redrawing of the congressional districts in Texas. Now it's American democracy that is on the line in the upcoming midterm. Trump's in a jam right now. He's in hot water. And they know, Republicans in Congress know, they could lose the House and potentially even the Senate. And so they're going to try, by hook or by crook, to hang on to some of these seats. Or at least in the short term, try to expand the majority that they have by adding 5 new seats in Texas. That's what this redistricting gambit would do. And joining me now to talk about this is Texas State Representative James Talarico. James, you told me I should say representative, but you did say call me James, but
please,
Representative. It's the old-fashioned guy me, so I'll call you representative just for now. But are you in Illinois right now? What's the deal?
Yes, sir. I'm in Illinois right now. Wish I was back in Texas, but I'm here because something has to be done to stop this power grab. I feel like everyone's kind of gotten used to Donald Trump grabbing onto power and holding on to power despite what the people want. But it is not usual. It is unusual. And I hope that our quorum break emphasizes that point for the rest of the country.
And I guess let's go over what's at stake here. I mean, essentially, what they're trying to do, because they're so worried about holding on to the House of Representatives in Washington, they're trying to come up with a scheme to create 5 new Republican congressional districts.
Right. And it's very reminiscent of when President Trump in 2020, right after he lost that election, called the Georgia Secretary of State and asked him to find 11,000 votes. Now, thankfully, those Republicans in Georgia said no. When Donald Trump asked Texas Republicans to find him 5 new congressional seats, they said, how about Thursday? And that's a failure of leadership in our state. But Texas Democrats aren't going to be complicit in this unlawful power grab. It's why we have left our beloved state, why we've come to places like Illinois, and why we're trying to shine a national spotlight on this redistricting power grab they're trying to execute in our state.
And what's your response to Governor Abbott? He says, quote, "This truancy ends now. The derelict Democrat House members must return to Texas and be in attendance when the House reconvenes." I guess it's already reconvened, but how do you respond to that? His calling this truancy?
Well, Governor Abbott has already bent the knee to Donald Trump. I refuse to bend the knee. You know, I remember a time when a Texas governor would tell a president of the United States not to mess with Texas. Those days are long gone. And when Donald Trump called Governor Abbott and told him to find 5 congressional seats, he was more than happy to obey. And this is a real threat to everyone in the state of Texas, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans too, because when politicians can hang on to power without any accountability, without any consequences, it is a fundamental disruption to the democratic process. People will no longer have the ability to change their government. I mean, that's really what's at stake here. And I don't know if everyone has quite realized that yet, but the stakes couldn't be higher for the entire country based on what's happening in Texas.
And how long are you willing to stay there? I mean, if it's going to be a while, I could send some pizza recommendations.
Well, we have all committed to staying out of the state capitol until the end of the special session, which is in 2 weeks. We don't know what will happen after that. Governor Abbott may call another special, or if this retaliation in blue states continues to escalate, maybe my Republican colleagues in Texas will walk back from the brink, because I don't think any of us want this kind of descending spiral of partisanship. We should get back to solving real problems. We should get back to figuring out how to fund our neighborhood schools, how to get more people insured, how to help the flood victims in the state of Texas. You know, we are still grieving from the loss of life in the Hill Country. And instead of coming to the state capitol to focus on the real emergency of disaster prevention, the Republicans decided to play politics with those families, with those flood victims. They decided to put them at the end of the agenda and use them as leverage to pass this rigged map. It's kind of politics at rock bottom, and it's something we should all reject regardless of our political party.
Yeah, and so what happens if you just stay put? I mean, can they? What about this threat to remove state lawmakers like yourself from office? Can they get away with that? Is that possible? I mean, I can't imagine a judge going along with that.
Yeah, I doubt it too. And honestly, I don't take legal advice from Ken Paxton, and I would recommend that no Texan take legal advice from a crook like Ken Paxton. But it is consistent, right? They are trying to silence the voices of Texans with these maps. They're trying to rob people of their ability to elect the representatives of their choice. And now Greg Abbott is literally trying to remove the people's representatives from office. So we're very close to banana republic territory here. And it should be alarming to everyone, not just Democrats, but independents and Republicans too. We are not fighting for the Democratic Party. We are fighting for the democratic process.
Yeah, I mean, and it could result in losing minority representation in Congress, having members of Congress from diverse backgrounds.
Exactly. No, it's really important to understand how they're trying to execute this power grab. And the way they're doing it is by diluting minority voting power in Texas. Black and brown communities, which are growing at a rapid rate in our state, are going to have less representation than they did with the old maps. And the old maps were terrible. So it's only getting worse. And I don't think people understand how egregious a mid-decade redistricting is. This is very inside baseball, but it's really important to understand. So we adjust district boundaries at the beginning of a decade to account for population changes after a new census. That's how it's typically done. And Texas Republicans gerrymandered a map in 2021 at the appropriate time. We spoke out against that map. I voted against it. It was also diluting minority voting power, but at least it was happening when it was supposed to. This is something entirely different. We are in the middle of the decade. It's 2025, and Trump is asking them to redraw those maps so that he doesn't have to face consequences in the next election. That is a whole nother level of abuse of power. And again, I worry that folks in the media in particular, I just did an interview with CNN. I'm worried that journalists have gotten numb to all of this, and they're not alarmed like they should be. And instead of playing both sides, instead of making this a partisan fight and red blue versus blue kind of thing, we should recognize what it is, which is the most powerful person in the world trying to consolidate power and insulate himself from the will of the public.
Yeah,
that is what's happening, and it is fundamentally un-American.
And I have to ask you, if you don't mind, I mean, as you were leaving the state, you had another resident of sorts sort of move in the form of Ghislaine Maxwell, being transferred to kind of a minimum security prison there in Texas, contrary to what the Bureau of Prisons recommends for people in her category and so on. What was your reaction to that?
Well, this is why Donald Trump is worried about the next election, because he's not only wrecking the economy, he's not only starting wars, he's not only kicking millions of people off their health care to fund tax breaks for his friends, he's also protecting pedophiles. And it's painfully obvious to everyone who's watching. And so he knows that voters are going to reject that. Voters across the political spectrum are going to want accountability. They're going to want to elect a Congress that will be a check on Donald Trump. They're going to want to elect a Congress that will subpoena the Epstein files. They're going to want a Congress that's going to restore health care to the millions of Texans and the millions of Americans who have lost it under the big, beautiful bill. And he is terrified of that kind of check on his power. But it is the check that the founders envisioned. And we have to fight for it with every fiber of our being as Americans. That is our heritage. It is our responsibility. It is our duty. And I don't care what consequences I may face. I don't care if they send the National Guard in. I don't care, because my obligation is to protect and defend the Constitution. That is the oath that I swore. I didn't swear an oath to the Democratic Party. I didn't swear an oath to Donald Trump. I swore an oath to the Constitution, and I intend on fulfilling that oath.
And I have to ask you, because, I mean, I'm a reporter, so I have to ask it, but have you made up your mind on running for the Senate?
Well, I actually set a deadline to decide, in the next week or so, and this quorum break has kind of taken up all my attention. And I do feel like this is my priority, because I was elected by 200,000 people in Central Texas to fight for them at the state capitol. And that's what I'm doing. I may not be in Texas, but I'm fighting for my constituents. That is my job. So before I start applying to other jobs, I intend on doing this one.
Okay. And the other thing I got to ask you about, because everybody's been asking you about, what was it like going on with Joe Rogan? And why go on with them? I mean, I understand because Mayor Pete, Secretary Buttigieg has done this, sort of go to places that you not normally see Democrats, so you can get your message out there and so on. But Joe Rogan has been a conspiracy theorist. He talked about ivermectin and so on during the COVID pandemic, and a lot of people are like, well, what's the deal with that? But I mean, he was pretty complimentary of you, so I suppose that turned out okay for you. But why did you decide to do that?
Well, because I do believe we have to meet people where they're at, because we have to grow our coalition. If we want to stop gerrymandering, if we want to stop power grabs like this, if we want to reverse the harm done by a wannabe tyrant like Donald Trump, we have to win elections. I really don't have much faith in the courts anymore. I don't have much faith in the media, to be honest. The only place that
You're telling me.
Yeah, you know better than most. I put my faith in the people of Texas and the American people. That, I think, is our last line of defense. And if they're watching Joe Rogan, I'm going to be there so that they can hear about my values, my vision. And, you know, I found that Joe Rogan that he had a healthy suspicion of both political parties. He has a healthy suspicion of this corrupt political system. And I went on there to share some of the real conspiracies that are happening in this state, because some things are a conspiracy and we've got to be focused on the right ones. And I hope that's what I was able to accomplish on that show.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find interesting, James, and I'll switch to James now because I guess they may call you Pastor James at your church.
Yes,
I saw an Instagram video where you were telling jokes in the pulpit, and you know, I just thought, well, this is a side of a politician that you don't see very often. Now, Jimmy Carter taught another James, taught Sunday school. I was called Jimmy back in the day.
Yeah.
He taught Sunday school, and you know, there is sort of a disconnect. A lot of people don't think of Democrats as being, you know, church-going folks and so on, but I think you're trying to change that too.
Yeah, because it's not true. So many Democrats are deeply religious, and throughout history that was true. I mean, you mentioned Jimmy Carter, but many of the successful progressive movements throughout our history, the American Civil Rights Movement, the labor movement, the farm workers movement, were deeply rooted in faith, sometimes deeply rooted in the Christian church, as was the case for the Southern Civil Rights Movement. And so we've got to remember that heritage. And if we as Democrats are only talking about our 12-point policy plans and not talking about the values that underpin that plan, then we're not connecting with people. And it's something we've struggled with as a party over the last few cycles. So I'm going to show up as myself. My faith is the reason that I am in public service. And I'm going to talk about that. It may even make some folks in our party uncomfortable, but I'm just going to be myself because it's the easiest person to be. And I think that's what's going to connect to people, even if they don't agree with me on everything, even if they're not religious themselves. I think they want to hear about what motivates a person to get up in the morning and do this work. What motivates a person to flee his beloved state and travel to a state he's never been to and risk arrest. And my answer is my faith.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in the city of Reverend Jesse Jackson, you know, and you know he was Mr. Keep Hope Alive, and was a real force himself in the Democratic Party at one time. I mean, you know, it's pretty remarkable. And I guess I have to ask, and I know I don't have a whole lot of time with you, but when you run into Trump supporters, and I'm sure you run into them at church, and I'm sure you hear this from time to time, that they think that Trump was put there by God, that there was some sort of providential hand involved in him becoming president again, and so on. Not to throw you a curveball here and ask you what you think of that, but what do you think? How do you respond to that when you hear that? Because I always find what I say to people is, well, you know, maybe God did do that, but maybe not for the reason he thinks, you know? So that's sort of my.
I think that's exactly right. And honestly, the last 24 hours has shown me what Donald Trump may spark in this country. And it's going to be a backlash to his type of authoritarian leadership. It's going to be a backlash to his kind of corruption for himself and his family. It's going to be a backlash to his political extremism. And that makes me very hopeful. We have been flooded with messages, with calls, with grassroots donations from people all over the state, all over the country, and honestly, across the political spectrum. I've had messages from Republicans in Texas who are thanking me for standing up to a rigged political map, for standing up for free and fair elections, because I'm not just fighting for Democrats, I'm fighting for independents and Republicans too. We all deserve the chance to elect the people of our choice. That is a God-given right, and it must be fiercely defended at every turn, or we're going to lose it.
And the reason why I brought up Joe Rogan, and again, just cut me off. This is a very, low key, casual show. You cut me off if you got to go, or you have your people jump in the camera or something. But
Yeah, you're good.
I do think that Joe is onto something, and I don't say this very often, in that I do think you kind of fit the prototype for what the Democratic Party needs right now. It needs to break out of these kind of preconceived notions of what the party is about, and sort of and compete on this turf, on this turf of who has the moral high ground in this country. I mean, my God, rounding up people in masks and deporting them without due process. Would Jesus do that? I mean, the list goes on and on. Canceling
exactly
Medicaid, destroying public broadcasting, and so on.
No, that's exactly right. I don't think this this moment is about right versus left. I think it's about right versus wrong, and we have to find our moral center as a country again. We are in a spiritual crisis. This is not just a political crisis. It's not just an economic crisis. It is a spiritual crisis, and we have to speak to that, or it's only going to get worse. And I'm so thankful that you had me on. We do have to hop on to another interview because we're trying to shine a spotlight on what's happening in Texas, and so we've got back-to-back conversations today. But Jim, you know how much I admire you and your leadership, and so it was a true honor to be on this program.
I appreciate it. There are other things besides divine intervention. Sometimes it's network intervention. But James, Representative Talarico, good to talk to you. Thanks a lot. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir. See you soon.
All right. Apologize to your staff for me. I held on him for a little bit longer than I should have, but hopefully they won't get too mad at me. I find it so interesting to talk to Representative Talarico, and that's actually I think it's the second, maybe third time that I've had him on. I had him on my old show, and the Democratic Party needs people like James Talarico. I mean, my goodness, you can't have it be a party where that stops at the doors to the church. And I think Jimmy Carter is he's just a perfect example of sort of a mold breaking Democratic politician who came along at a time when the country desperately wanted a moral departure from the likes of Richard Nixon. And we may be in a similar moment come 2026, 2027, 2028, where the country is just sort of looking for look at where we are right now. Okay. I mean, I was just going to talk about Epstein a little bit here, but apparently The Hill was reporting earlier today, a very good story. Republicans warn Trump on Maxwell pardon. Republican lawmakers are cautioning Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi to be very careful about granting a pardon to Ghislaine Maxwell, the Jeffrey Epstein confidant, or commuting her 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. Republican senators are waving the caution flag after Todd Blanche met with Maxwell in Florida, and obviously she was moved to that prison in Texas. We talked about that earlier, but this is a Republican senator said this anonymously, said this to The Hill. Quote, "It's ridiculous that he would consider shortening a sentence for somebody who aided and abetted sexual trafficking as she did," said a Republican senator who requested anonymity to comment on the sensitive topic. "She's trafficking underage children. I can't imagine anything she could say could nullify her heinous crimes," the senator added. I mean, I can think of something that she could say that could shorten her sentence, and she will probably say this. I imagine, and we've talked about this on this show several times, it's another day that ends in Y in Epstein Gate. Ghislaine Maxwell will be offered an opportunity to clear Donald Trump of any wrongdoing in exchange for a pardon or a commutation of her sentence that sets her free. There's just no doubt about it. And, it may not happen right away. My sense of it is she was transferred to this other prison. That's a bit of a club fed. So she can basically cool her heels until, and I'm assuming this is the thinking inside Trump world, inside the White House, they can do this pardon or commutation when the public is looking the other way. And, you have to ask yourself, I mean, again, this happened yesterday or Friday afternoon, heading into the evening. You have to ask yourselves, what are they doing in the first place, even moving her to a better prison, if you want to call it that? What are they doing moving her to a prison where she's going to be more comfortable? Somebody who was convicted of child sex trafficking. Again, I said this last week. My God, how is it that the president of the United States is involved in transferring a prisoner to a more favorable environment when that prisoner has been convicted of child sex trafficking? I mean, if anything, the punishment should be even more harsh. She should be transferred to an even tougher prison, right? And yet Trump does the opposite. That tells you everything right there, folks. It tells you where this is all heading. This is heading, obviously, towards some sort of deal where she comes out, she sings like a canary in the way that they want, and she clears Trump of any wrongdoing in exchange for her freedom. And I'm sorry, but the American people they have to rise up in this moment. Getting a viewer comment right now. It's so sickening. It's absolutely sickening. It's absolutely appalling. It is absolutely un-American. And, you know, you just have to wonder, are these Republican senators going to say something? I was just reading a blind quote, an anonymous quote from a Republican senator who was saying, you know, how can he do this? How can he do this? The Republican senators need to speak publicly. They need to say this out loud. They need to say this in front of the cameras, whether in the House or in the Senate. This is a moment to stand and be counted. They obviously buried the news of transferring Ghislaine Maxwell last Friday afternoon, evening, whatever it was, so folks wouldn't talk about it and talk about something else. And then Trump, of course, throughout all his distractions, he fires the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. He's commenting on the model in the denim outfit. You know, he's commenting on this and that and everything else. He's out in front of the cameras yesterday saying that they're gonna lower drug prices 1,500%. That's not even possible. As I was writing in my Substack earlier today, it reminds me of that line from Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, when Ron Burgundy's friend, Brian Fantana, the reporter there, says about this cologne, 60% of the time, it works every time. And Ron Burgundy says, that doesn't make any sense. Well, Donald Trump over the weekend was saying we're going to lower drug prices by 1,500%. That doesn't make any sense. You can't do that unless you're going to put checks in people's mailboxes to the tune of hundreds of dollars. I mean, that just does not make any sense. But he's going to throw all this stuff out there repeatedly because he's flailing. He's flailing and he's drowning in his own sea of lies, his own sea of lies. And right now, he can't extricate himself. He can't. There are no life rafts. There are no lifeboats in sight, and he's just being tossed and turned around in wave after wave in this Epstein scandal. And so, what is it? What do? They move Ghislaine Maxwell over to a more comfortable setting, so she can cool her heels until they come up with some sort of deal where she gets to say her thing, and she lies and says that, oh, what mentions of Trump in the Epstein files? We already know that he's in the Epstein files. So if she comes out and says, why is he in the Epstein files? Then we know that she's full of shit, and we already know she's full of shit. But this train is already heading to the station, folks. They are going to do this, and they're going to taste, I think, a little bit of what they've been dishing out over the last several years inside Trump world. They're going to get a taste of what they've been dishing out. And there's going to be some hostility. There's going to be some fury. There's going to be some anger directed at Donald Trump. And I don't know, I've said this before, I don't know what he's going to do about it. I mean, they're all, as Talarico was saying just a few moments ago, they're going to try to take 5 congressional seats and switch them from Democrat to Republican in order to hang on to the House, because they don't want hearings. They don't want the House Oversight Committee to start holding hearings on the Epstein files and start bringing in witnesses and bringing in survivors and so on. And where are the survivors in all of this? I was talking with Jess Michaels on Friday's show. Where are the survivors in all of this? Why aren't their perspectives being taken into consideration in how they're dealing with Maxwell? That's the standard operating procedure. They're not doing it because the fix is in, because they've already decided what they're going to do. The train is coming into the station, and Ghislaine Maxwell is getting on it, and it's just a matter of time. It is sickening, to that viewer's point a few moments ago. It's truly sickening. And I think, to the Republican senator who gave that really interesting quote to the Hill, do it publicly. Do it publicly. The constituents in your state will appreciate it. They may not appreciate the fact that you and the rest of them have been bending the knee to Donald Trump, kowtowing to Donald Trump, not standing up to Donald Trump, even when it comes to giving favorable treatment to a convicted sex trafficker. But it'd be something. It would be a small pittance of what the public expects from a lawmaker in this country. You have to wonder how long can this go on? It's insanity that Donald Trump would even think about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell, but he's already put her on the path to freedom, it seems. He's trying to make life more comfortable for her, so in case Dateline or 60 Minutes or the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or yours truly, somebody from independent media, in case we show up, hello, minimum security prison in Texas, I'd like to speak to Ghislaine Maxwell. Hello. As a viewer said just a few moments ago, stand up for what's right, even if you stand alone. That's absolutely right. Stand up for what is right. I talk about this all the time on my show. One of my favorite books, Profiles in Courage. Look it up. John F. Kennedy. Lawmakers who put their careers on the line, who lost their political careers, doing the right thing for this country. This is one of those moments. What kind of message are you sending to not only the victims of sex crimes, but the perpetrators of sex crimes in this country if Ghislaine Maxwell is set free? It's absolutely appalling. And so I saw that article. I saw that a Republican senator anonymously said something, and I thought to myself, okay, that's fine. It's a good quote. Say it out loud. Stand up and be counted. Do your job. And my thanks to State Representative James Talarico, apparently Joe Rogan's favorite Democrat right now. Really enjoyed that conversation as well. I'm going to try to get him back on the program. He's a bit in demand right now, so he had to go, as he was saying, and talk to one of the other networks. But really appreciate his time as well. And I appreciate you guys checking in every day, checking out this show, giving me your time. Please think about supporting the work, as Matt, my executive producer, just put the message up on the screen. Support independent media. Click subscribe, like, share. Consider becoming a paid subscriber if you have the resources to do so. It does make all of this possible, and so appreciate your time. Thanks very much for watching. Still reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta. Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.